there's a kind of silence that only appears right before death. It's the sound of everything slowing down: your breath, your thoughts, even your heartbeat. And in that silence, some men run. Others move forward. Miyamoto Musashi was one of those men. He fought more than 60 duels and never lost. But that isn't what made him dangerous. What made him dangerous was that he had no fear, not because he was born brave, but because he learned how to kill fear before fear killed him. And today, I'll show you how he did it. Because Musashi's method wasn't just about swordsmanship. It was about psychological domination over the mind itself. And if you understand what he understood, you'll never freeze again when life draws its blade. Chapter 1: The Duel of Dawn. The story begins in the year 1612. A small island off the coast of Japan. The sky is gray, the sea restless. Miyamoto Musashi is rowing himself to a duel that everyone expects him to lose. His opponent, Sasaki Kajiro, is already there, tall, graceful, and deadly. Kajiro was known as the Demon of the West. His sword was longer, his style faster, his movements almost supernatural. The duel was scheduled for 8:00 a.m. But Musashi didn't show up. He kept Kajiro waiting. 10 minutes. 30. An hour. He had been humiliated. Musashi stepped onto the sand, unarmed, carrying only a wooden sword he had carved from an oar during the journey. Kajiro's blade flashed in the sun. Musashi's didn't. He looked like a man walking to breakfast, not to death. Kajiro attacked first, a strike meant to kill in one blow. But Musashi had already moved. A single counter. A single sound. Kajiro fell. Musashi bowed and left the island without another word. That morning, Musashi proved something that most men never discover. The moment you stop fearing loss, you become impossible to defeat. Chapter 2: The Hidden Lesson. Everyone remembers the duel. No one remembers why Musashi arrived late. Historians debated it for centuries. Was he arrogant? Was he disrespectful? But his own writings in the Book of Five Rings reveal the truth. Musashi delayed on purpose to control the rhythm of fear. He understood something that modern psychology would prove 400 years later. Fear isn't an emotion. It's a rhythm, a pulse that builds inside the body. You can't destroy it by fighting it. You can only master its timing. When Musashi kept Kajiro waiting, he was forcing his opponent's fear to grow until it became anger and then fatigue. But in that same time, Musashi's own fear was dissolving. He carved his war into a sword not out of boredom, but to steady his hands, to channel fear into motion. That was Musashi's secret. He didn't eliminate fear. He redirected it. Fear is like wind. If you fight it, it blows you off balance. If you learn to lean into it, it becomes lift. Chapter 3: The Mirror of Fear. Most people believe fear comes from danger. But Musashi wrote that fear comes from attachment to life, to victory, to reputation. The more you cling, the more afraid you become of losing. In his book, he wrote, "The way of the warrior is resolute acceptance of death." To modern ears, that sounds extreme. But he didn't mean it literally. He meant that once you've accepted every possible outcome, failure, humiliation, even death, you are free to act without resistance. When Musashi faced an opponent, he was already dead in his mind. There was nothing left to lose. That's why his movements were effortless. That's why fear could never hold him. Think about your own life. You're not fighting samurai duels, but your battles are real job interviews, public speaking, confrontation, rejection, failure. Fear is always there, whispering in the same voice. What if you lose? Musashi's answer was simple. So what if I do? Once you stop negotiating with fear, it loses its leverage. Fear only controls those who still believe they have something to protect. The truth is freedom is found on the other side of surrender. Chapter 4: The Two Swords. Musashi carried two swords, a long one for battle, and a short one for close combat. But symbolically, they represented two minds. The outer sword, your physical skill, your action, and the inner sword, your state of being. Most people train the first. Few master the second. When fear arises, the untrained person tightens up. Their movements become mechanical. Their breath shortens. The sword shakes. But Musashi trained the inner sword, the ability to remain calm in chaos. He practiced by meditating under waterfalls, fighting with his eyes closed, painting calligraphy with the same precision he used to strike an opponent. To him, art and combat were one. Because in both, fear must be transformed into focus. He called this state Mushin no Shin, the mind without mind. No hesitation. No doubt. No self. Fear lives in thought. If you remove thought, you remove fear. Chapter 5: The Void. In the final chapter of the Book of Five Rings, Musashi wrote about something mysterious, the Book of the Void. He said, "By knowing what exists, you can know what does not exist. That is the void." People read that and think it's poetry. But it's not. It's strategy. The void is the space between what you can control and what you can't. Fear lives in that space. Most people spend their lives trying to control everything: outcomes, timing, opinions, fate. But the warrior steps into the void willingly. He accepts that the outcome is not his to control, only the effort. That's how Musashi crushed fear, by stepping so deeply into the unknown that it became familiar. You can practice the same thing every day. When you feel fear rising of a task, a conversation, a leap, stop asking, "What will happen?" Ask instead, "What's required of me right now?" That question pulls you back from the void. It brings you into presence where fear cannot survive. Chapter 6: The Duel Within. Musashi fought 60 opponents, but his greatest battle was internal. The enemy wasn't Kajiro. It was hesitation. In modern neuroscience, hesitation is the split-second gap between decision and action. It's where fear lives. The longer the gap, the stronger fear grows. That's why Musashi trained for speed, not of movement, but of decision. He taught that the mind and the sword must move as one. If you think before you act, you've already lost. Today, our hesitation looks different. We overthink, we scroll, we delay. But the result is the same: paralysis. Musashi's method for crushing hesitation was ruthless simplicity. He called it Ikai-go, Ikai-me, one moment, one opportunity. In other words, act now or never. He wrote, If you wish to control others, you must first control your own mind. And the way to control the mind is through immediate, decisive movement. Not thinking, moving. Every time you act in the face of fear, the brain rewires slightly. Neural circuits that once triggered panic now trigger focus. That's not philosophy. That's biology. Musashi just discovered it centuries before neuroscience gave it a name. Chapter 7: The Discipline of Solitude. After his final duel, Musashi didn't celebrate. He disappeared into a cave called Right Hand. For years, he lived in silence, meditating, writing, reflecting. People wondered why the greatest swordsman alive would walk away from glory. But Musashi understood that comfort is just fear in disguise. The fear of stillness. The fear of meeting yourself without distraction. In that cave, Musashi wrote his final lesson. You can only see truth when the dust has settled. Fear is dust stirred up by the movement of thought. Solitude lets it fall. And once the air clears, you see what was always there, your unbreakable core. Try this. Turn off every sound, every screen, every noise for 1 hour. Sit with your fear. Don't analyze it. Don't run. Just observe it. Watch it lose power as you stop feeding it attention. That's what Musashi did for years. He didn't conquer fear by avoiding it. He sat with it until there was nothing left to conquer. Chapter 8: The Practice of Death. In samurai culture, warriors would sometimes meditate in graveyards. They'd lie among the tombstones and imagine their own names carved into the stone. Not because they were morbid, but because they understood something profound. The moment you accept your mortality, fear becomes irrelevant. Musashi practiced Seishi o Chotsu Seru, transcending life and death. He visualized every possible ending, until no ending could surprise him. When you do this, something changes in you. The little fears, embarrassment, rejection, failure vanish. What's left is pure clarity. Try this thought experiment. If today were your last day, what would you stop fearing? What would you stop delaying? What would finally feel worth doing, no matter the outcome? That's the mindset Musashi carried into every battle. And that's why he never lost, because every duel was already won in his mind long before the swords touched. Chapter 9: The Modern Warrior. You don't need to wield a katana to live by Musashi's code. You just need to confront the duels that modern life hides in plain sight. When you speak truth knowing people will judge you, that's a duel. When you take action despite uncertainty, that's a duel. When you face yourself honestly in silence, that's the greatest duel of all. The warrior's path isn't about violence. It's about alignment between thought, word, and action. Fear thrives in dissonance. It dies in unity. Musashi didn't live to inspire others. He lived to master himself. And that's why his lessons still echo 4 centuries later, because the enemy never changed. The sword just became invisible. Chapter 10: The Final Lesson. At the end of his life, Musashi wrote a single phrase that summed up his entire philosophy. Perceive that which cannot be seen with the eye. He wasn't talking about ghosts. He was talking about truth, the kind that hides behind fear. Fear is the veil between who you are and who you could become. Most people spend their lives polishing the veil instead of tearing it down. But the warrior knows the only way out is through. Fear is not your enemy. It's the path. When you feel it, it means you're standing at the threshold of growth. Step forward and fear transforms into power. Step back and it becomes your cage. Musashi understood that courage isn't the absence of fear. It's the mastery of it. To move despite it. To act without needing safety. To live so deeply in alignment that even fear bows its head. Epilogue: The Path of No Path. Miyamoto Musashi died in 1645. When they found his body, he was seated upright, sword across his lap, eyes open as if still watching. They say he met death the same way he met life directly. In his final writings, he said, "Today is victory over yourself of yesterday. Tomorrow is victory over lesser men." That's the only battle that ever mattered. If you want to crush fear forever, don't chase courage. Chase truth. Face yourself so completely that nothing within you remains unknown. Because what you understand, you cannot fear. This was Musashi's hidden lesson, the real way of the warrior. Not to fight others, but to fight the false self that trembles before life. And when you win that duel, you'll walk through the world like Musashi did, calm, quiet, unshakable. Not because you fear nothing, but because you've learned to bow to fear and then move anyway. That is how the warrior crushes fear forever.